partially extended again through January 2014. Currently under a continuing resolution, and this will expire on January 15th, so we've got about a month left on this continuing resolution. Nevada NRCS appears to have sufficient funding to carry out their conservation programs, such as the EQIP program, Environmental Quality Incentives Program, the WIP program, Wildlife Habitat Incentive Program, the Agricultural Management Assistance Program, Conservation Stewardship Program, and the Farm and Ranch Land Protection Program. So the largest nexus of farm bill to us in Nevada is through those programs through the NRCS. Programs like the Sage-grouse Initiative, SGI, and Conservation Easement Program funding are also critical for Nevada as we aggressively address conservation issues in our sagebrush habitats. Working with producers statewide to help us to implement these conservation actions across public and private land ownership boundaries, and we'll continue to monitor it. But that's really all I have. If you have any specific questions, I can get back to the commission with other answers if you have other questions. Any questions?
Seeing none, we'll move on to Department Activity Report. Teresa Moiola.
Okay, I was going to kind of give you a quick and dirty bouncing from division to division. The current level of federal legislation activity is amped up recently. Kim Jolly, our management analyst, legislative liaison, is tracking about 20 habitat and wildlife related proposals from Congress. We're coordinating with our staff specialists and the governor's DC liaison to try to stay abreast and send our feedback as quickly as possible on those issues. The game division results so far of the 2013 black bear hunt included the harvest of 14 bears, 10 males, 4 females, with 6 taken west of US 395. We heard a little bit earlier about Muddy Mountain sheep capture. We had 49 bighorn sheep successfully transplanted into Utah from the Muddies. 50 bighorn were also caught in the Bear Mountains and released in the Candelaria Hills and the Excelsiors, 30 in the Candelaria Hills, 20 in the Excelsior Range. Volunteers from both the fraternity and MBU Reno assisted, and the Bear Mountains capture project was completed in 1 day. Body condition scores and weights appear to be lower on average than those observed during the 2011 capture. 10 bighorn were captured in each of the following ranges in Clark County for genetic and disease sampling: El Dorado, McCullough, and Spring ranges. In addition, 4 sheep were sampled sampled in the northern river mountains. 1 lamb was sacrificed in the El Dorados, and necropsy showed evidence of mild pneumonia. Recent analysis and updating of our elk damage fund expenditures and elk incentive tag database showed that since our elk damage fencing program started in 1991, NDOW has expended over $1.4 million and constructed in excess of 100 miles of fence. In addition, NDOW has paid out more than $430,000 in damage payments since 1992. There's no requirement for elk incentive tag recipients to report income or costs associated with the sale of incentive tags, but with approximately 770 tags being made available to ranchers since the inception of the program, reports of tags being sold for approximately $10,000 each. At those rough numbers, the elk incentive tag program has likely generated more than $7 million for Nevada ranchers. Statewide, biologists have collected sage-grouse wings from hunters. The wing bee occurred earlier this week. Basically, we're seeing a decrease in total numbers, but we are seeing an increase in recruitment, and that data will be summarized and presented more thoroughly at a future meeting. We're currently dealing with the tortoise issue down south. The BLM has historically funded the Desert Tortoise Conservation Center to the tune of about $800,000 a year. They're withdrawing their funding from that. So we're trying to work with Clark County, we're trying to work with Fish and Wildlife Service, and we're trying to determine what's going to happen with unwanted captive tortoises at the end of the month. December 31st, they'll no longer be a place for people to take unwanted captive tortoises. Euthanasia is something that's been kicked around a little bit, but I think all the stakeholders are trying to avoid that as much as possible. But it's taken a little bit of time and energy in several meetings and fisheries. Cooperative agreement was finally approved by the National Park Service, allowing NDOW staff to perform free of charge decontaminations of existing marina wash stations that were previously operated for fee by park concessionaires. Several of those down south, Lake Mead. Illegal introduction of rainbow and brook trout into the McDermott Creek drainage was reported earlier this year. It was a major setback for cutthroat trout recoveries, and we've spent over 5 years working with Oregon to prepare the system for LCT reintroduction. Prior to being able to go in there and reintroduce LCT, somebody placed rainbow and brook trout in that system. Some news from Habitat: wildfire rehabilitation is commencing across the state, with restoration plans being finalized and seed being purchased. In the eastern region, drill seeding has already begun on the Smith Ranch fire, where a collaboration of private NDOW and BLM resources are being focused to reseed important sage-grouse and mule deer habitats. Work on the Spruce Mountain habitat restoration project is currently underway. That's just south of Wells. Contract crews removing pinyon and juniper in mule deer winter range. It's a multi-year collaborative project on BLM lands. It's jointly funded by the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, Elko BLM, and NDOW. Water development crews continue their efforts to conform with the recently passed SB 134 by replacing some of the older cable fences around guzzlers to more livestock exclusive pipe rail fences. Additionally, a new sign has been designed, and I think they're having those printed up now, and those will be displayed in each guzzler, and they'll identify a new hotline to report guzzler related issues and provide the name so that it can be accurately reported. We've also taken the water development guzzler atlas and done some minor formatting changes and modifications, and we just printed up 2,000 more copies. We have those now. We'll be able to sell those for the holidays, which is one of the big issues for gifts. After almost 12 months of temporary dislocation of 41 NDOW employees, to include the director's office, we're soon to be returning to our main office complex on Valley Road. Capital improvement project it's finally come to a close. So about a week and a half, or a week after next, we'll be using some NDF crews to assist us to move back into that facility. You had an update yesterday on the on our audio visual equipment. Patrick Case gave you a little bit of update there. It's really been at the mercy of the capital improvement project. We sat down, we spoke with the contractor. We pretty much designed it on paper, but we haven't had access to the building. We haven't been able to go in there and actually start to install it. So as Patrick indicated yesterday, that's something that we're hopeful to have in place and fully functional by our March meeting in Reno. Law Enforcement Division currently has 7 game warden vacancies and 1 dispatcher, and they're attempting to fill those positions. Several interviews have been conducted, and some conditional offers of employment have been sent. Almost done. Public are reporting several suspected violations this past hunting season, from killing and leaving elk to hanging bait over traps. One sheep hunter self-reported mistakenly taking a bighorn sheep before the season opened. Nuisance bear activity finally beginning to slow down. Dispatch received 1,949 human-wildlife conflict calls. 441 of those involved bears. One specific report here: a Las Vegas man was arrested for an unlawful kill of a mule deer buck. Subject had an Area 6 antler mule deer tag and killed a deer in Area 23, over 200 miles from his legal hunting area. Game warden will be filing a criminal complaint on the subject associated with that. And I think that sums up department activity report.
Any questions from the commission? Being none, we'll move on to agenda item 31, future commission meetings. Our next commission meeting is January 31st, February 1st in Las Vegas.
The primary focus of that meeting will be to set and revise big game seasons and regulations. Usually a pretty full agenda with that in and of itself. A couple other items that have come up over the last 2 days. I don't know what the will of the commission is, but we just heard about the duck stamp, and not necessarily a timely issue, but if that's something that you'd like brought to that meeting, we would probably accommodate that. We also heard about muzzleloader powder definitions, to begin to revise that. And I suspect there'd be ample time to do that at a later meeting, since it probably wouldn't come into play until next September. But if it's the will of the commission, we can put those on the agenda. And I think there was also the petition from Jared Meslow on the language for the tannery versus the taxidermy. That's something else that we'll need to look at a future meeting. And I also had someone express a desire for a heritage subcommittee meeting. Not necessarily, I guess that would if there were some issues that would be relevant to the application process, that would need to be kind of timely, and it'd be better to do that sooner than later.
Okay. And there was one item, you stepped out of the room for a minute, during the disease update, game disease investigation update, we talked about the number of hunter days in the field, the number of days scouting, and the observations that hunters have in the field that may assist NDOW with disease outbreaks and knowledge of disease. And I asked Mike Cox at that time our participation in the sheep indoctrination, since they are no longer mandatory, and he says that is falling off. And I think that would be worthy of having another discussion, because it's one day out of the gentleman's life, and they have quite an opportunity to hunt bighorn sheep in the state of Nevada, and the amount of information we could give the hunter and the amount of information they could give us back. I think it should be something we should revisit and see what we should do with that, and look at the numbers of people attending indoctrination, since we didn't make it mandatory. Anybody else have anything? Commissioner Lane?
I'd like to see us start talking about legislation, because when that meeting comes up, we're only going to be a year out from 2015. The session, we already have Southern Nevada people, the legislators are meeting in the South, trying to get together to talk about particular issues that they want to bring forward. And there's actually going to be a meeting in December looking at groups that may have additional legislation that they would like to propose. I mean, we don't have that many meetings between now and the next legislative session. That's my concern.
Should we do that through legislative committee first, and kind of get some things on the table, and then bring it back to the full commission to get some type of consensus going forward?
But I can say historically, the March and the April meeting actually have legislative items specifically on the agenda. And I guess my thought is it would probably be good to canvass the whole commission initially with some ideas that could then go to the legislative subcommittee, and then come back to the commission. And so perhaps using the March meeting to bring up the broad ideas and come back to the subcommittee to bring things back before the full commission in April. That'd be good.
That works. Anybody else have anything?
I was just asking if Suzanne has any. Okay.
All right. That concludes item 31. We'll move on to item 32, public comment period. Mr. Flowers, come on up, and Elaine.
Rex Flowers, representing myself. With all the talk we've had and the time we spent on elk, I think possibly with legislature coming up, it's time to review about going to a management antlered elk hunt, because that's going to take some change. Also, with everything that's happening on the elk, I believe it's the original elk management plan left western region out because there was no intent to transplant or translocate any elk into this area. We all know there are elk that are filtering in, so it might be in our best interest to be proactive and think about creating a western region sub-plan for elk. Also on policies, you heard it today with the duck stamp. I think we need to get the policies reviewed back in policies and procedures, not at the commission level. That's what was done in the past. And there is a problem on the duck stamp in that, you know, that's a sponsored program, and it's sponsored for 2 years at a time. So Nevada Waterfowlers is going to be voting on whether or not to sponsor that for 2 more years. I don't know if there's any way to work around where they could sponsor for 1 year while new procedures being put in place, and that's a salesman's job. That's up to you, Jack. Thank you.
Thank you, Elaine.
Good evening, at least I think it's close to good evening. Elaine Carrick, and I wanted to speak on item 30C. I attended the Bear Committee meeting last Thursday evening where they talked about the preliminary data report on the 3-year hunt analysis. And I did hear one really good comment, and I'd like to quote that to you. I was happy to hear this. Mr. Lackey stated that evening that we have more information on our bears than any other state. And as a member of the public, when I hear something like that, that sounds like good news, I come to the conclusion that if we have more information on our bears than any other state, I really have to question why there would be continue to be a bear hunt. We have just close to ending the 3rd-year hunt and getting that information, and we have information. To that, I want to add that we've been told that there's between 400 and 700 bears in Nevada. That's a pretty wide range, but if we even go to the middle and say 550, that's in the entire state of Nevada. And tying that into bear management, when I was listening this morning at the meeting about the elk management, what I continue to hear is that the reason that elk need to be harvested in different areas is because that there was overpopulation, or there was some damage being done, and they were threatening some of the deer populations. With the number of bears that we have in Nevada, I really question that there is not an overpopulation of bears. And that also then brings me, why are we killing them? The elk are being harvested for overpopulation. but is somewhere between 400 to 700 bears considered overpopulation. Then looking at the 2012 bear management program, there were some really good things in there about objectives and goals for education. And when I think of how much the bear hunt is costing the department, they have said it is costing them money. I've heard of $150,000, but regardless of how much it is, that money, I think, could be really better used for educational purposes, as it's mentioned in the bear management program, to provide educational materials to the public and so forth. This money can also help with human-bear conflict. I think you're aware of the human-bear because of the garbage situation up an incline. This money, rather than to be spent to have a hunt for such a small minority of people, money can be spent in many other areas. And again, from what I'm hearing, the information for the bears, we have it more than any other state. So for these reasons that I've stated, I think you really need to take a very, very close look. If the bear hunt should be continued after this year, I think the public needs to know why it is to continue. We have the information. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll let Elaine go a little over 3 minutes.
Oh,
A little over. Let's try to hold the next comments to about 3 minutes. Dr. Mulvey.
Mr. Chairman, Don Mulvey, I'll be brief. Commissioner Lane's comment about thinking about legislation prompted me to bring you this. This weekend in Elko, supposedly there is being held the, quote, World Championship Coyote Calling Contest, which is simply a coyote killing event that may or may not take place. I've been working with the BLM on this, and in Nevada, these contests require a special recreational permit if they're to be held on public lands. And this event in Elko this weekend does not have such a permit. The BLM Rangers are on the alert for this, and NDOW enforcement also is aware of this and has been apprised of it. I have toyed for some time with the idea of bringing a petition to the commission forcing you to take an issue, take a stand on this issue, one way or the other, except I can't figure out how to construct a petition, given that the coyote's an unprotected animal, but that may be able to be figured out. What I'm suggesting here is that when you look for items to talk about for future legislation, you might consider, as a commission, taking a stand against these frivolous coyote killing contests that violate one of your sacred principles in the North American conservation model, which is that wildlife should not be killed for frivolous purposes. So I'm suggesting that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment, Dr. Dixon?
For the record, Paul Dixon, Chairman Clark. There's several things that we had as NDOW was working on, and other things that we've kind of lost tack with, and I wanted to reinvigorate the department and the commission on things. One of them is the Overton area conceptual management plan. I know that we had some retirements, Tony, and a few other things, but that bubble seemed to have just died for the last 4 months. And I'd like to see that get back on track, get the final version out for final comments and get it completed. There was a lot of input to things back last spring, and then it's basically not heard anything else on it. And I think when things go a long time, people suspect something nefarious is going on. Because I get a lot of calls on that. The other thing is that we had talked, at one point in time, I know that Commissioner Young had talked to you guys about what we were going to try, looking into what we were going to do with the Lake Mead Hatchery, and trying to do something different there with the different water authorities. Did we ever get anywhere with that? I didn't get a chance to talk to John if he was here about that specifically. And I'd like to know, or at least have an update on that in your, director's update at the next commission meeting or something, just so we have a piece of information that I can share at the CAB level, okay? And those two things are important to Clark, and so I bring them up. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Seeing none, I'll take a motion to adjourn. We're done. Thank you.
Last one that speaks.